Hey, this is Math Minutes Pro with Dr. Harrison. Today, we are going to solve a word problem involving from the rates, proportions, and ratios section, but we're not going to deal with proportions in this case, so I'm just going to cross that out. In fact, we're going to be dealing with rates and ratios rather. And this is a word problem again. Now, we're going to go through the following steps. We're going to read the word problem. We're going to read it again. Okay, make sure we understand it. We'll identify what the question is. We'll see what they give us, what's given. We'll choose a strategy. Sometimes that involves drawing a picture, and other times it's just some other mathematical strategy that goes with the problem, and then we will solve the problem. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. It says we have a giraffe, and it says a giraffe can run 32 miles per hour. Not bad. That's pretty fast. What is the speed in feet per second? All right. Again, a giraffe can run 32 miles per hour. What is this speed in feet per second? So we know what the question is. The question is pretty clear. What is that speed, 32 miles per hour in feet per second, right? And they give us, that's what they give us is the 32 miles per hour. That's given. So we choose a strategy. Now, the strategy that I'm going to recommend is called dimensional analysis. I'm going to write that up here. Dimensional analysis. We use this in science a lot. This could be considered a physics or physical science problem, and math is the basis for science, so it's connected, all right? So, just keep that in mind. We're going to show you how to use dimensional analysis, and it's pretty exciting. So the first thing we want to do is set the problem up, see what they gave us. Hey, this is Math Minutes Pro with Dr. Harrison. Today, we're going to talk about how to multiply and divide real numbers. Now first, let's talk a little bit about what real numbers are. So real numbers, you can think about it, are numbers that can be written on a number line. That includes positive and negative numbers, whole numbers, and fractions. So we're going to be dealing with multiplying those kinds of numbers. So let's go ahead and get started. First, let's start out with a case where we are evaluating an expression. So I'm going to call this problem A. And here we have negative 7 times x. And they tell us that x equals negative 15. All right. So in this case, we have our expression, negative 7 times x. So I'm just going to, what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to substitute negative 15 for x and rewrite that. So instead I write negative 7 times, what is x equal to? Negative 15. There we go. And then we think about our rules for multiplying integers, right? Here we're multiplying a negative times a negative, so we know the answer is going to be a positive, right? And so when you multiply 7 times 5, you get 35, right? Carry that 3 above the 1. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 3 is 10, so that's 105. And this is our final answer. It's a nice and simple problem to get started. So let's see. Now what we can go to is a case where we're going to divide two fractions, and that will involve multiplying fractions. I'm going to show you that. So that is problem B. Okay? So here we have a problem, negative 8 over 9. So we have negative 8 over 9, and that's divided by 2 over 3. All right. Now, in this case, we want to keep the first fraction, and we want to multiply it by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So we're going to copy the first fraction, negative 8 over 9, change the division to multiply, and then write the reciprocal of 2/3, which you flip it, which is 3 over 2. Okay. Now, we're going to go ahead and follow the rules for multiplying fractions. You multiply numerator times numerator over denominator times denominator. So we set that up, and we end up with negative 8 times 3 over 9 times 2. Okay? Now, multiply the numerators. Negative 8 times 3, that negative times a positive is a negative, so that's going to be negative 24 over 9 times 2, which is 18. Okay? Now, this fraction can be reduced. We have two even numbers, negative 24 and positive 18. So we ask ourselves, what is the largest number that can be divided into the numerator and denominator? Well, the largest number is 6. Okay? So we divide negative 24 by 6, and we divide 18 by 6. We're reducing the fraction right now. And so when you do that, negative 24 divided by 6, negative divided by a positive is a negative. So you're going to get, let's see what we got here. We're going to get, we get a negative 4. And then 18 divided by 6, that's over 3. All right, how we looking? Pretty good there. I like it so far. Now think about it. We really need to consider, because sometimes your teachers may ask you to write this fraction. Here we have a fraction that's an improper fraction, okay? And in this case, we can convert this improper fraction to a mixed number, right? So in doing that, what we end up, we say, okay, well, we know that if it's going to be still negative because we have a negative divided by a negative. So 3 goes into 4 one time. The denominator stays the same. And then we say 1 times 3 plus what number will give me 4? That's 1. Okay? So this is our final answer for that problem. All right, very good. Now, let's go ahead and consider, when we are dividing fractions and we have a real number that at first does not appear as a fraction, okay? So let's take, I'm going to call this C. Let's say we have negative 12, and that's divided by a fraction, negative 6 over 25. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to rewrite this first number, negative 12, as a fraction. So I'm going to put an equal sign here. That would be negative 12 over 1, right? This means the same thing as negative 12. And then I'm going to bring this down, divided by negative 6 over 25. Okay. So there we have it. Now you ask yourself, okay, now what do I do next? We follow the rules over here of dividing fractions. You keep the first fraction, and then you multiply that first fraction by the reciprocal of the second fraction, right? Okay, so now that we brought down the second fraction, let's go ahead and keep the first fraction and multiply it by the second fraction. So we rewrite it as negative 12 over 1. Keep the first fraction, change division to multiply. And the reciprocal of the second fraction would be, okay, negative 25 over 6. That is the reciprocal of the second fraction. Now, sometimes you can cross cancel, okay? I'm going to show you what I mean by that, all right? In this case, we can. We have negative 12 here and 6. You can see it almost as a reduced fraction to reduce. But cross cancel, we ask ourselves, can 6 go into negative 12? Yes. Negative 12 divided by 6 is negative 2. So we cross that out and write negative 2. And then 6 goes into 6 one time. Okay? All right, that's a shortcut. We could have multiplied negative 12 times negative 25, and that just would have been a lot of multiplying. But this is a shortcut I'm showing you here. So now let's rewrite this expression. Here we have negative 2 over 1 instead of negative 12 over 1 times negative 25 over 1. And then we have negative 25 over 1. Okay. All right, so let's multiply fractions, numerator times numerator over denominator times denominator. So negative times a negative is a positive. We know our answer is going to be positive. So 2 times 25 is 50. But I think I'm not going to even skip a step. I'm just going to write 2 times 25 over 1 times 1, right? And then we end up with 2 times 25, which is 50, over 1 times 1, which is 1, which equals 50. And so this is our final answer. That is what we get when we take negative 12 divided by negative 6 over 25. I'm going to recommend that you go back and solve these problems at least twice, so that and talk about it, talk out loud with what you're doing, because that's how you improve your problem solving skills, through continuous practice. So solving B and C one time is not enough. I recommend you solve it twice, okay, in your study time. All right. So now we're going to move to our last problem. And in this particular problem, it involves dividing real numbers or rational numbers, numbers that can be written as a fraction. But we're going to be dividing mixed fractions. So I'm going to call that C. So here we are. We have 2 1/4, 2 1/4, and that's divided by -5 1/3. -5 1/3. All right. First thing we want to do is convert these mixed fractions into improper fractions where the numerator is larger than the denominator. So let's do that. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1 is 9. So that's 9/4. We keep the denominator. Bring down your division symbol. And then we know the answer is going to be negative. We know this fraction is still going to remain negative. So 5 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. So that's 16/3, or -16/3, rather. All right, so the first thing we did was we converted these mixed fractions to improper fractions. You always want to know what you're going to do before you do it. That's why you think. I like to ask myself, okay, what do I do next? Well, here's a case where I'm dividing fractions, right? So what do we do? Right. Keep the first fraction, bring that down, 9/4, and then change the division to multiply. And then we flip the second fraction to write the reciprocal, right? So we keep the negative, and then instead of 16/3, we write 3/16. Keep the first fraction multiplied by the reciprocal of the second fraction. Practice, whenever you're solving problems, always open your mouth and talk out loud. Sometimes you can make a mistake, and if you hear yourself say something wrong, you'll say, that's not right, okay? So let's go ahead. Now we're going to multiply fractions. We multiply numerator times numerator over denominator times denominator, so that becomes 9 times -3, those are the numerators, over 4 times 16. Okay, and let's go ahead and perform our multiplication. That's why it's good to know your multiplication facts. So work on that. We have a positive times a negative. So we know that the answer is going to be negative. 9 times -3, that gives us -27. And then we have a positive times a positive, which is a positive. 4 times 16 is 64. And this, now, we look and see, can we reduce this fraction? All right? And we see if can we divide this number by the greatest common factor? Well, the factors of 27 are prime number, or odd numbers, because we have 3 times 9, which is 3 times 3 times 3. So the greatest common factor of 27 is 9, or the greatest factor of 27 is 9. And then for 64, we have even numbers, where we are not going to have a factor of 3 in here. So we cannot reduce this fraction. All right, so this is our final answer. Just wanted to give you some time of thinking it through, because every fraction cannot be reduced. And this is certainly a case.